sweeter?
No one.
What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online show. Zach Albaverdi and Nick Del Torre here. We missed you guys last week as Nick was in Hoover covering the SEC baseball tournament, and now he's back in Gainesville getting ready to cover the NCAA regional tournament. We will get into that on today's show. Obviously, the news this week on the football front with some TV times being set. There was SEC Springs meetings this week. Obviously, a lot going down from the recruiting front with official visits coming up. And, of course, shout out to the men's golf team, another natty for the Gators. So, Nick, you were up late night watching that on Wednesday as J.C. Deacon gets it done with his team this season.
Yeah, what a year for them. I mean, JC, hired by Jeremy Foley, extended by Scott Strickland. At some point, wasn't sure that the job was for him and stuck it out. And Florida sweeps the SEC championship, the individual championship. Shout out to Fred Biondi, and then beats Georgia Tech and had a great comeback on Tuesday night to end FSU season. So, just an incredible run for JC. Shout out to him and the golf team that extends Florida's run of winning at least one national championship, even though I think Mouse and the track team will probably take care of that later on in the year. And Florida baseball obviously is just about to kick off a run. Tune in for the last 5 minutes of the show for that.
Although I think now we got to give an extra 5 minutes to golf as well. So we'll touch on them, give them some more praises at the end of this episode. But obviously, we want to start with football and the news that we learned this week, which was that some TV times have been set by the SEC and by CBS. Now, one of them, of course, is no surprise. That's Florida, Georgia at 3:30 in Jacksonville, October 28th. And that's the final Florida, Georgia game that will be on CBS, at least for the foreseeable future. That goes over to the ESPN in 2024.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to miss about that is the CBS Game of the Week music. I'm not going to miss 5-hour football games because CBS goes like kickoff commercial. Shoot, there was holding, re-kickoff commercial. Oh, no, somebody got hurt commercial. It's like, hey, man, we have played one kickoff, and we are 35 minutes into the game. Won't miss the CBS commercials. Will miss the CBS football intro music. That is classic.
Classic.
But will be the last time this year. CBS 3:30 slot, and it'll be interesting to see. As we get into it later in the show, the schedule will be a change in. I'm wearing my SEC hat, which will soon be vintage. Zach. Missing 2 banners on this. Don't have Texas and Oklahoma on the hat yet.
That's right. The schedule is going to look a lot different in the years to come. And like you said, we'll get into that with some of the stuff that we learned from the SEC spring meetings in Destin. But we also learned the kickoff times for the first 4 games of 2023, all night games for the Gators, including the season opener at Utah. That will kick at 8 p.m. on ESPN. And then the Gators have 3 home games in a row, 7:30 p.m., 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock, all on ESPN, ESPNU, or streaming, which will be the Charlotte game. But, Nick, you put out a thread this week at the Gators Online message board kind of asking fans, hey, how do you feel about these night games for cupcake opponents? No disrespect to McNeese State or Charlotte, but, obviously I think that, we have our preferences in the media, but, there are some fans that are probably on both sides of the fence. Obviously, ones that do not like to be out there for a nooner in September, but also some that would, if it's going to be a blowout game or not one of the marquee games, maybe would like a chance to watch some other matchups in some of those first weekends of the season. So what is your take on playing these games at 7:30, especially some of the non-conference matchups?
Well, I'm going to straddle the fence because, as a media, put my media hat on. I hate night games for McNeese State and Charlotte. By the time we're done with our jobs, it's 1:30. People already don't want to read about or listen to us talk about playing McNeese and Charlotte. I'd rather that game be at noon. I'm not sitting in the East stands getting baked at noon in September, though. I also am not.
And God bless the fans who do, man.
God bless the fans who do. I'm also not like drinking and partying and tailgating and having an awesome time from noon until 7 when I walk into the stadium. So our experience is way different in that aspect. I also love the environment. I love a night game, but the Utah experience that you had last year at Florida, the Auburn experience that you had when LaMichael Pirine took off, you're not getting that. It doesn't matter if you play that game at noon or 7:30. You're not getting that for McNeese State. You're not getting that for Charlotte. If you do get that kind of environment, something went terribly wrong because the game should not be close. So it was interesting to me because as someone in the media, you know, like we work for like 4 or 5 hours after the game, and then we wake up early Sunday to continue working. So like I'd rather have a noon game, and I can do that work while I'm watching games. So as a journalist covering it, hate that night game for McNeese State. But I was interested to see what the fans take. And it seemed kind of split. You've got fans coming in from out of town. Yeah. Hey, a noon game on Saturday for McNeese State, I'll pass. I have to take off work Friday, drive in, get a hotel room. If it's a night game, you can just, hey, I can come in. I can drive in on Saturday.
Take your time.
Driving distance, take your time, no problems. Watch the game and maybe drive home or find like an Airbnb for a night. I think it's usually, 2-night minimums for football season here in Gainesville. But I get that especially if you're coming from out of town, a Saturday night game is probably easier and more convenient for you traveling.
Yeah, and obviously, I think for the camera crews at ESPN, they appreciate that these games did not get scheduled for noon in September because, man, it is tough to be on the field for those games or in the stands for that matter.
Yeah. But let me do say this too. Someone called it prime time, and I'm like, hey, dog, ESPNU at 7:30 is not prime time.
No.
SEC Network Plus for Charlotte, that's not prime time. That's like, hey, we had some really good games. We need to fill the other networks. Who's playing? Oh, Florida and Charlotte? Yeah, sure, stream that. Who's playing? Florida McNeese? Yeah, ESPNU needs a game. Like it's not prime time.
Well, speaking of prime time, it will be interesting to see if the Gators get a prime time, or should we say a night slot, for their home matchup against Arkansas, because that will be the game where they debut the black uniforms, which has come out since the last time that we had an episode, something that we've reported on at Gators Online. We knew that it was going to be the Salute to Serve weekend, but that official home designation was announced last week, so we now know that Arkansas game will be the first time that we see the Gators in black unis. And we had a series this week at Gators Online, Nick, where I broke down, in my opinion, 5 must-win games for the Gators in 2023. And one of those was the Arkansas game, and put some reasons on there for that matchup. And one of them is, as silly as it sounds, the attire. I don't think that you can roll out black uniforms and take an L. The last time that the Gators had an alternate uniform from Nike, it was at home against an SEC West team, and they lost to Texas A&M in those ugly, hideous swamp green uniforms. I will say in recent years, the Gators have gone with some throwback unis and switched it up, and it's worked out well for them. I think that if they lose in the black jerseys, fans will want to burn them and never see them again. That's kind of what you remember what happened with the all whites, and against Alabama.
Bro, so the Florida Stormtroopers, little Star Wars shout out, the Florida Stormtroopers.
Right. Do you put Arkansas as a must-win game, Nick? And what are some of yours?
Well, first off, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and comment below. I want to see or know what you think of black uniforms. There's like no middle ground. I feel like you're either like, black's not one of our colors, get out of here, or yes, thank you, I've been begging for this for a decade. So let us know in the comments here on YouTube if you like black jerseys and if you think that Florida should do them every year. I think they will, unless they lose. But to me, I think Arkansas could be a must-win game. That's going to be really tough. You get a week off, then you have to play Georgia. Don't want to spoil any of my former or any of my future stories. Probably not going to pick Florida to win that week. How healthy do you come out of that Georgia game? You're going to be facing a 6'3", 240-pound quarterback who can throw it and run it.
And then you're facing Rocket Sanders too, one of the best running backs in the SEC.
So tough game. I think last year, and it was in your story, Florida was 5-2 at home. You only have 6 home games this year. Arkansas is not a rival, but you need to make the Swamp a place that's feared. And losing to an Arkansas team, I think I just saw a stat. They won like 29% of their SEC games or something like that over the last decade. Losing to that kind of team at Florida makes it harder. I think this whole year is about selling the future. I don't know that the wins and losses necessarily do that, but like a bad loss to Arkansas at home in jerseys that some fans loathe and some fans have been like banging the table for a decade. Because if you lose to Arkansas in those jerseys, to your point, and it does sound silly, it's like it's because of the black jerseys.
Yes.
You can again.
We can never do this again.
Yeah.
Because Billy wants to do this tradition every year.
Yeah.
He wants to roll with the black jerseys every season.
So, get on your lawn and shake your fist at the clouds. I think they're coming. I think they're going to be here to stay. But for me, must-win games. I think you when you first wrote the Vanderbilt one, I was like, that's weird. But like, yeah. Things will get a little spicy in Gator Nation if you have a losing streak to Vanderbilt.
There is no way to have fans jump off that bandwagon faster than back-to-back Vandy losses.
You have to beat a rival, whether that's Florida. You don't need to beat all of them. You're not going to beat all of them. I continue to think, and I might have to be talked into Florida beating Kentucky at Kentucky this year, because everything I've done, even in the story I wrote a month ago, which was the best case, worst case, I had Florida losing to Kentucky in both of them. And someone's like, Nick, that's your best case, losing to Kentucky 3 years in a row. I just hold Mark Stoops and his defensive play calling in really high regard. So between Kentucky, Florida State, Tennessee, LSU, Georgia, those 5, I don't think you're winning in Baton Rouge. I don't think you're winning in Jacksonville. You've got to win. Really, 2 of those 3 would be really good for Billy Napier, but one of those, and you get Tennessee at home. I think that would be a must-win game for me. I'm not huge on Joe Milton. I think Joe Milton's trying to get like slick. I see him doing backflips. I see him throwing the ball 60 yards, and he's like, yo, this worked for Anthony Richardson. I should try doing some of that stuff. If Joe Milton makes me eat my words, I will also tip my hat to Josh Heupel, because like I watched Joe Milton at Friday Night Lights when he was a senior in high school. I watched him at Michigan. I watched him at Tennessee. He hasn't been good. And if he's good this year, it's like, yo, Josh Heupel, you can figure it out with these quarterbacks and your system is friendly to them. I think beating Tennessee, especially because it's early. And if you lose to Utah, and then you play McNeese, no one's really getting excited after a McNeese win to go 1-1 after a Utah loss. You need to beat Tennessee. Tennessee is the next one, isn't it? The third game.
It is.
Yeah, you need to beat Tennessee, just to not have that same kind of thing we had last year, where it was beat Utah, extreme high, lose to Kentucky, probably should have lost to South Florida, and then lose to Tennessee. And then it's just like, then there's just no momentum the rest of the year. So I think that Tennessee game for me would probably be my number 1 must win of the year.
And I agree with you. That's what I had number 1 on my list. I was between that or Kentucky. And to me, I put those as 1 and 2, because I also think those are going to be the hardest ones for Florida to win. And my thinking and reasoning behind my list was just, perception is reality, right? And I think that, Florida's obviously, fallen off. They've had some down years. And I think SEC East supremacy is important to them. The pecking order has been changed in the last 5 years, thanks to Kentucky. They beat Florida 3 out of the last 5 years. They should have beat them in 2017, almost beat them in 2019. I mean, they've had Florida's hand. So to me, that pecking order has changed. I ranked it Vanderbilt. Let's see. I went Vanderbilt was the first one, and then I went South Carolina. Then I went Arkansas, number 3, Kentucky, and then Tennessee, number 1. To me, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Arkansas, those are 3 teams that, just based on history, Florida has dominated. Like they have been the better team. And to me, you cannot afford to lose to any of those teams and have that change. You've already kind of had Kentucky surpass you in the division. You can't have South Carolina catch you or Vanderbilt catch you. And then with Arkansas, they're not in the East, obviously, but the Gators have pretty much dominated Arkansas every time that they've played them. I think since 1995, they've won every game except 2016, and that was a game where Luke Del Rio, hurts his shoulder in that game and ends up being a season-ending injury. I think that contributed a lot to that loss. So I think that Arkansas comes to the Swamp, like you said, Nick. It's going to be tough for Florida to get some marquee wins there at home. So to me, you got to get that win against the Razorbacks, with the black uniforms as well, just so that you can have a Saturday in the Swamp where you get a big win. You can bring the recruits out, because I think that's going to be a huge recruiting weekend. Arkansas, just because of the black
Florida,
uniforms.
yeah. Florida doesn't like to do like officials and stuff, but you want the recruits to see those black uniforms.
Oh, yeah.
Another point that I just thought of too is there was a massive narrative in the fan base that Billy should not call plays. If you go up to Lexington and Mark Stoops shuts down your offense, that's only going to get louder. Hey, You're doing too much. You can't be the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback's coach. You got too much on your plate. We're done with you. Hire an offensive coordinator. Like, I already see that. My eyes are already burning reading that on the message board. That's another thing too with that Kentucky game. Even if you lose, don't lose 14-3.
Yeah.
Losing a shootout to Stoops and Leary up there in Lexington. But I think that's something else too when you talk about perception and reality. I think Billy Napier could be a good play caller. He did not create that perception among the fans last year. And if you have an early season loss to Tennessee at home and the offense doesn't look good, and then another one where Mark Stoops has, and it's not just Billy, Mark Stoops dominated Dan Mullen and coached circles around Dan Mullen, who's thought to be a great X's and O's guys. And as much as I've had to say about Dan Mullen, always will tip my cap. Saturdays, X's and O's, draw him up. He's got that. And Mark Stoops found ways to coach circles around him. They didn't get more yards than him, though.
And Kentucky's an interesting case, because it's like they had, the second best defense in the SEC last season, and then the worst offense. They had the worst offense in the SEC, despite having Will Levis and Rodriguez, but they replaced both of those guys with two transfers in Devin Leary and Ray Davis from Vanderbilt, who was a stud last season. So, look, that trip to Lexington is going to be tough. I think Tennessee at home is going to be tough. Josh Heupel's got that program rolling right now, but it's going to be easier to beat the Vols at home than it is to beat Jordan Travis and Florida State. And I think that's just the reality. And I think if Florida can win these 5 games that I laid out, and they win their non-conference matchups, that's at least 7 wins. At the very least, if they take care of business in these games, they finish above 500, which they haven't done since 2020. They get a win over a rival at home. And I think that they at least try to get themselves back to where they feel like they belong in the SEC East, which is right now, you want to be right behind Georgia. And I think in recent years, Kentucky and Tennessee have had something to say about that. So sticking with the SEC, obviously we had SEC spring meetings this week in Destin. On3 was out there, Jesse Simonton and a lot of other guys, to see what the league coaches and commissioner had to say. NIL was a topic. 8-9 game schedules was a topic. A lot of things addressed. Nick, just kind of following along with the coverage, hearing some of the things that Billy had to say. What were your takeaways from the week? And it doesn't sound like a lot of things got settled in Destin, but opinions were had.
Yeah, well, today they decided that they will stick to an 8-game schedule in 2024, which will be the first year that Texas and Oklahoma join. An 8-game schedule means if they stuck with an 8-game schedule, that would mean only one permanent opponent. So you get Georgia. Every other year you'd play Tennessee. Every other year you'd play LSU. Things like that. So the 8-game schedule, I've been staunchly against it. They continue to kick the can down the road before they figure something out. If you remember, though, when A&M and Missouri joined, they didn't really figure out the scheduling either, and they kind of just threw things together, and it's led to that and COVID have led to Florida going to Texas A&M 3 times, with Georgia never having made a trip, and they've been in the league for a decade now. So the SEC with the scheduling, I think it's terrible to lose some of these non-traditional or some of these traditional rivalries. And I think Greg Sankey said they're going to do their best to do it. But you just got to figure it out. Like Texas and Texas A&M needs to be a yearly game. Auburn and Tennessee, or Auburn and Georgia, excuse me. They have to play. Auburn and Alabama have to play. Like there's so many games that have to happen. I think Florida, Tennessee needs to happen. Florida, Georgia needs to happen. If you're an older fan listening to our show, you're probably screaming at the screen right now saying Florida Auburn needs to happen. That was a historic rivalry between two of the teams who've been in the SEC the longest. So I think that's a bummer in terms of scheduling, but we'll see what they do in 2025 and on. And, I'm pretty excited about potential matchups with Florida, Oklahoma, Florida, Texas. I mean, going back playing NCAA football, like Florida, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Florida, USC, those were games that I scheduled, when you're in dynasty mode. So I'm excited to see those. And Zach, we're going to have a good time in Austin whenever that game does happen.
Oh, man, I can't wait. Austin's a fun place. That'll be that's definitely a mandatory trip, I think, for a lot of Florida fans. And speaking of SEC expansion, that was a topic not only at SEC spring meetings, but at the On3 NIL Elite Series event in Nashville, which we will get into on this show because the Gators commit was there and some targets. But Kirk Herbstreit was there, was a speaker, and kind of made some waves with his comments talking about basically the two power conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, kind of pulling away from the SEC, creating their own league, having one commissioner, and then having basically players negotiate a collective bargaining agreement so that they can become employees. And this is something that a lot of college football experts have suggested and predicted. But now to have somebody like Kirk Herbstreit put that out there, I thought that it was a pretty resounding statement. It would have been interesting to maybe get some opinions from SEC coaches this week. But Greg Sankey did say that SEC expansion is not on the forefront right now, but I don't think that they are done with just Oklahoma and Texas, Nick. I think that in the years to come, we're going to see more.
Well, on this very show, just about a year ago, Scott Strickland told us. And at the time, we were like, "Wait, that's weird." That he really sees that. Let's call it. These are my words, not his, of course. Scott, if you're listening, my words. Let's say that the Power Five, there's 3 of them that aren't pulling the same kind of weight, and he saw, in the future being more of a Power 2 with the SEC and the Big Ten. So if you're listening to the show, that's something we talked about last June. With Scott Strickland. So kind of interesting to see how it has played out. And listen, you've got FSU's president whining to the ACC that like, hey, Maryland's not bringing in money, or not Maryland. Georgia Tech's not bringing the same kind of money that we are. We need a bigger cut. And there's just a bunch of poor conferences picked up, the Big 12. My old school, UCF, the UCF super hyped to go to the Big 12. And then when you look at what the Big 12 is at, you're like, oh, they suck. Like that's not a conference I'm excited
about. That's not the Big 12 we knew. That's
not the Big 12 anymore. You look at the Pac-12. Who cares about the Pac-12 without USC and UCLA? Like, I'm not getting up for Washington, Stanford at 8, 9, 10, a 10 p.m. kickoff for Washington, Stanford. Thank you. No, thank you. So I do think you'll see the SEC in the Big 12 start to take some teams.
Big 10,
sorry. In the Big 10 start to take some teams. And I don't think it will be like the Big 12, just taking a UCF and smaller schools. They're going to go into the ACC and take Clemson, FSU, Miami. They might go and grab, in Oregon. You're going to have some Notre Dame. Like, you're going to have some weird. It's going to be weird to call it the Southeastern Conference when you have it already is. You have Missouri and Oklahoma, which is not Southeast in the slightest.
I mean, do you see it to where it would be like if it gets set up like the NFL, it would be like 16 teams on that's the SEC side, and then 16 teams are the Big Ten side, and play it out like that.
Yeah, and it's so funny to see because I've written I think 3 stories about the scheduling. And I've been trying. The next story I'm passing off to you because I'm done writing about it. But then people today and this week were like, "Oh my gosh, what kind of divisions do you think they're going to have?" And it's like, "Hey, bro, I've written it 3 times. They're not doing divisions. It's going to be 1 through 16 in the SEC, and there is no SEC West. There is no SEC East. Like that's done with. That's already gone. It came out again today, and people were like, "What do you mean there's no more SEC East?" And I'm like, sheesh. This has been a long time coming. So you're going to lose divisions as well. Jim McElwain can't hang up those SEC East championship banners on the walls anymore.
Those rings.
Yeah. No SEC East rings anymore. So I do see it going to more of a professional model. And it's just because there's so much money in TV. Yeah. The TV is paying the conferences so much money, which in turn, the conferences are paying the coaches money. And now the players are making money, and the TV wants the best matchup. So you're going to end up going to 9 SEC games because that's more money, more audience for the network. I do see it getting to like an NFL model. You might have a 20-team SEC at some point down the line. And then maybe go back to an SEC East and West, and it's a 10-10, or you have different divisions. If you've got 20 teams, we've got 4 different divisions of 5, and we're going to have our own playoff from the SEC that will go up against the winners of the 4 divisions in the Big Ten. And now we don't need the Pac-12 and we don't need the Big 12. We're going to have the best teams in these 2 conferences, and they're going to do their own playoff.
Those conferences and teams almost become like, how we look at Division II teams, or
I mean, they're insignificant.
Yeah.
When you start talking about what the Big Ten and what the SEC could potentially do, the Pac-12, the Pac-10, however many teams they're going to have, those other conferences are going to be insignificant compared to what the Big Ten and the SEC are growing into.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out in the future. And we'll also get into some of the NIL that came from SEC spring meetings in the next segment. But want to give a shout out real quick to our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and has developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide more effective and efficient care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of personalized care options to meet your individual needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. Now, we mentioned this earlier in the show, but the inaugural On3 NIL Elite Series event took place in Nashville. A really, really cool event that was put on by Shannon Terry and his staff at On3, and all that they're doing on the NIL front. And one of those guys that got to take part in that was DJ Lagway. He was there in Nashville for the week, got to hear from guys like Kirk Herbstreit, Olivia Dunn, just a series of speakers that they had to kind of visit with these, the top prospects in the class of 2024 about how to capitalize on their NIL and kind of their future. So now a lot of cool content came out of that, but also some recruiting content as well. Shout out to Keith Niebuhr. He was there and brought a bunch of juice on the UF recruiting front at Gators Online. So make sure that you guys are checking that. But Nick, I thought that was a cool event, and obviously for DJ Lagway to be out there, just another reason for him to kind of be out there front and center as part of this Gators class.
Yeah, some other 5-stars out there. Jeremiah Smith, Colin Simmons. I'm sure DJ Lagway's in their ears, but I think this is an important thing. And what Shannon Terry is doing is trying to see where the NIL market is going, but make sure the players are informed. And I think the big thing with this event is educating the players, high school athletes who haven't gotten this, and some of them are getting crazy numbers thrown around them. And it's, hey, listen, don't get taken advantage of. We're going to help educate you. And I think the guest speakers they had, Kirk Herbstreit and Tom Hart, Livy Dunn from LSU, she has been dominating the NIL space. probably in the
just got in
7
Sports
figures.
Illustrated. I mean,
so somebody who has done it. So I think it's a great event, and it puts the athletes first. And I think that's what we here at On3 and what Shannon is trying to do is put the athletes first when it comes to NIL. For so long, coaches have been getting paid millions of dollars and then being able to leave, and the athlete was just kind of stuck there. And be happy with your room and board and your tuition.
Yeah, and obviously this is completely changed the sport, and I think for these guys to have an opportunity to kind of be educated by some of the influencers in this space, kudos to On3 for putting this on. I know Nick and I are kind of happy to be a part of it, and sticking with NIL. We got some more news on that front this week as Florida Victorious has surpassed its 2 million match goal. So that means there's now $4 million that are going to be available in NIL funds for Florida athletics and specifically for the Florida football team, because I think that it's important, Nick, that we point out. I mean, every year you're probably going to have about $4 or $5 million bare minimum just to be able to fund your roster. And
you probably need that to keep your roster intact.
Well, and on that point,
more.
From SEC spring meetings, we heard, and it's no surprise, but Billy came out and said, yo, tampering is real and it's happening. And I think obviously the efforts that have been kind of put forth by Florida Victorious is how you prevent that from programs being able to come in and poach your players.
Tamper harder, baby. Allegedly, of course.
But this is obviously, Nick, I think we've spoke about Florida Victorious before, but this is more steps in the right direction. They're still not there yet. They're still, I think, kind of figuring this out and getting to a space where they feel like they can have success. But I think this is impressive that they've gotten here, and the timing of this could not be better, which we'll get into.
Yeah, it's no coincidence that they were at every single spring speaking tour for Billy Napier. Billy Napier brings a crowd, and hey, we need to educate people. Whether they didn't know the NIL, they thought NIL was cheating, or they didn't trust the Gator Collective, the previous entity before it, we need to let you know that this is professionally run. This is where the money's going. And if you want to continue to cheer, whether you like paying players or not, if you want to continue to cheer for the best roster and for the Gators winning football games, this is an investment that has to be made. Yes. And if it's not made, Florida is not going to compete with other schools.
And let's be honest, Nick, Gator Collective, tried to get results like this. I don't think they ever put out anything that was like a $2 million match, but they wanted obviously funds to come from fans, and I just don't think we're organized enough yet, and then certainly had the partnership to the level yet with the university where that could really be promoted to the fans. And I feel like with Florida Victorious, it has been promoted. Like it's much more out there in the forefront. And I think that fans and boosters and people that can contribute are much more aware of it, which is why they've been able to hit this 2 million mark so quickly. And I think that it's only going to continue to grow from here just because of kind of the setup that they've put in place. So definitely important for them. And obviously with the weekend that we have coming up and the month ahead, this is a critical time for UF recruiting. Official visits are about to start up. It's interesting, Nick. We've seen kind of Billy's recruiting strategy and some of the ways that they go about bringing guys to campus. And, Billy has said, and as well as Katie Turner, that they kind of steer away from in-season official visits. You kind of already mentioned that in this episode, but I think Billy had said that they already have 45 official visits scheduled for the summer.
For June.
Just for June.
Just this month, yeah.
Just this month. And granted, they can only have 56 for the whole calendar year. So they're only going to have 11 left after this month. But it just goes to show you that, like, this is their recruiting time. This is when things heat up. And some of the names and targets that are coming to campus are going to go a long way in determining how great this class can be.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. So just quick, I have a bunch of people ask me this. Players can take unlimited official visits, but as you said and you've confirmed with Florida, just 56 for universities. So it shows you the experience that they want to have and provide, they can't give during a football week. Mm-hmm. They can't spend time. If you won't see the coach, for a 7:30 McNeese game, you won't see Billy Napier until 11:45 p.m. After the game. So they like to do that when they have more time, and you can see Katie and Bree and see the players and have a host and go out and see Gainesville, sit down and chalk talk with Napier or with Corey Raymond, your position coach. They really like doing this. So Florida will get most of their official visits in June, in this month. And then I think you'll have a couple, for those guys that are waiting that won't sign early. And you've got to kind of keep a couple in your pocket to be able to have that, that leftover 4-star that signing, in the old signing day, and early signing day. So this is good. This is their approach. I agree with it, because I don't really love an official visit for games, and if the game is big enough and if your team is big enough, recruits will come. People showed up to the LSU game last year. Place was packed.
They came.
And they weren't using official visits to get it.
And that'll be the case with Arkansas. That'll be the case with Florida State.
Tennessee.
They'll find a way to get guys to campus, and certainly that's going to take place this weekend. I think now the visitors list is up to maybe 17 guys. So make sure that you are following along at Gators Online. We will have visitor preview for the weekend. We'll have a ton of content coming out as the weekend is playing out in terms of updates from these trips on the Gators Online message board. So I'm telling you guys now, if you're not subscribed and you are a recruiting junkie, you're going to be missing out if you are not on our site and on our message board for the coming weeks. So,
and our countdown to kickoff special just launched. $1 for 3 months of access. They'll take you right up to the kickoff, and half off for a year subscription. So if you've been on the fence, if you've clicked one of those Keith Niebuhr links or one of those Zach Albaverdi, Corey Bender links, and they hit you with that premium content, you can get rid of that page for $1 right now, or half off on that year for this special.
No doubt. Definitely encourage you guys to do that, and make sure you follow along with all of our coverage at Gators Online. As we wrap up the show, I want to give out a shout out to our other sponsor, Rogue Shop. I want to encourage all Florida fans to go check out rogueshop.com. If you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress, Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, massage oils, pain creams, and topicals. Rogue Shop is a true small business, disabled, veteran-owned, Black-owned, woman-owned company. They have 5 employees, make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. So visit rogueshop.com. That's RUGUESHOP.com. And I know that on the Gators Online message board, they've even got a promotion going on this week from their Memorial Day sale. I think that's still in effect, so make sure that you guys take advantage of that. And obviously, make sure that you guys take advantage of coming to Florida Ballpark this weekend. If you can come out to see the baseball team, they're back once again for the Gainesville Regional after getting the number 2 overall seed in the tournament and having a great run in Hoover. Weren't able to win it, but obviously I think showed some things that got momentum kind of headed in the right direction as they get ready for postseason play. Nick, how you feeling going into this weekend? What are your thoughts about this team and kind of the matchups that they drew, not only in this regional, but kind of the teams on their side?
Yeah, I think they did a really good job of balancing. I don't really think that there's a particular regional that I can point to and say, you know what, that one's the easy one, or that one's the one that's extremely hard. So for me, I think it's balanced well. I think Florida has a good draw against FAMU, a team that beat 17-7 earlier in the year. And then I think, after that, you'll have to see what is Texas Tech and what do UConn look like. But Florida will throw Jack Caglione on Friday. And then you'll have your
which
top
you
2
broke.
guys. Yeah.
Shout out to Nick.
And then you'll have your top 2 guys after that. So it sets up well for Florida. The big thing for the Gators, when I look at their pitching staff, is winning that first game, winning that second game. It's going to be really hard to beat Florida 2 games in a row if they're in the winner's bracket into that Sunday game. So that's going to be key for Florida. The other one, too, is if you like offense, all of these teams can hit. So big challenge for all the pitching staff this week. And please, if you're listening to this, if you're still listening, do your anti-rain dance. Please pray for me. Hurricane season just started. There's a tropical depression in the Gulf. You can't play baseball in the rain. Please pray away the rain for me.
I mean, my son had his baseball practice canceled today because of rain. I
Yeah.
drove all the way over there for nothing.
There you go.
So that happens. So we'll see how things play out this weekend. If the Gators are victorious, they will get the winner of the Columbia Regional. So a potential rematch with South Carolina on deck. And
don't sleep on the Campbell Camels in that regional, but Kentucky is very, very good at home.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll see how things play out this weekend. Obviously, make sure you guys are following along with all of Nick's coverage at Gators Online. And also, again, want to give a final shout out to the men's golf team. Just an incredible season from the SEC title to the individual title and now the team title. And definitely a shout out to Keith Niebuhr as well, who pointed this out at Gators Online. Obviously, this is huge for the program. Their first national championship since 2001. J.C. Deacon gets the title, but kind of especially, a special moment for assistant coach Dudley Hart. And he is a former Gator golfer and was on the team that finished in second place to Arizona State. Only 2 shots, and Phil Mickelson was on that team that beat the Gators in 1990. So he gets to come back to his alma mater, and not only does he win a title as an assistant coach, but he gets to do it with his son, Ryan Hart, who is a golfer on the team. I know Nick is a sucker for father-son stories, so that was a cool moment for dad and son, and obviously for this program. They're back on top, man.
Yeah. Love the father-son story. That was really cool to watch them. So big ups to them. They're all going to be gone. They're all, a bunch of seniors on the team, a bunch of guys who are going to turn pro. So a whirlwind last 48 hours for them. So congratulations again to them and to my guy, JC. Thank you for the gear and congratulations.
And now the program with the best golf logo also is now the best team in the sport. So as it should be. Well, we appreciate you guys listening, reading all of our content at Gators Online, and make sure that you guys follow along with all the coverage this weekend from the Gainesville Regional, from the official visits, everything that's coming out on the team front as well. We will see you guys next week to recap all the news. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albaverti.